Hey, how's it going everyone? Entropy here today with another video. Today we're going to be doing another pro or con segment on the idea of erratas, primarily nerfs and buffs in Vanguard Zero. But today we're also going to be talking about Vanguard as well, Vanguard the TCG. So if you are primarily a Vanguard TCG player, I do think that this video will be valuable to you. If you are a Vanguard Zero player, then of course you'll know a bit more about Cardfight Vanguard, but we will also be addressing Vanguard Zero as well. So let's talk about how Bushi defines an errata. For Bushi, errata cards are cards that change the numbers, text, etc. printed on the cards for various reasons. This amendment will be applied including official and non-official play, tournament and free play, and for serious errata they will replace it. They apologize, blah blah blah, and then they apologize again, blah blah blah. Apologies aside, they do say for various reasons, and there are four main types of reasons that they do erratas for. First of all, there's typos. Secondly, keywords, updates in the game. Third, nerfs, and then fourth, there are buffs. Now, some of them are more common than others, as we know. And today, primarily, I will be comparing, the JP side of things. If you are familiar with the TCG, you will know that the English version has a lot more typos than the Japanese one. Reasons aside, if you are interested in knowing more about these erratas, do check out the links below. One for the Vanguard TCG, the JP, and one for Vanguard Zero from Game With, which is a great source for information like this. So firstly, let's look at Cardfight Vanguard. The first type of errata is the typo. This typo actually the first ever errata was a typo, and the first typo was CO Amaterasu. The picture on the right is Google Translate, so it's not very accurate, especially with the keywords. But essentially what it meant was, they typoed the text of the second skill, the Mega Blast, from a continuous skill to an auto skill. And of course this changes things because you can't continuously hit the opponent. But I guess, people make mistakes, and it was the first set after all. We do see quite a bit of typos later into the game as well, but it does happen. You're making a lot of cards. They do reprint it with the correct text in terms of the typos. And so, I think this is fine. It doesn't really make much of a difference because, some of these skills don't make sense with the typo after all. So I think that's okay. But it's something that we should be aware of, and you don't get game sharked with. The next type is keywords. What I mean by keywords is, as the game progresses, there are some game design changes, and something that they introduced was something like the keyword of Sentinel. Now, if you are familiar with the game before set 10 of the TCG, so set 9 of Vanguard Zero, I guess, all the PGs actually didn't have the keyword Sentinel. Sentinel was something new that they introduced, I think, post set 9, and then they changed the shield logo from zero shield to a golden border, and then they added permanent text, Sentinel. You can only play up to 4 of them, and the reason why is because in set 10, where liberators, eradicators were introduced and stuff, they had new PGs for existing clans with different names. There was a liberator, Halo Shield Mark, and they didn't want players to play 8 PGs, I assume, and so they did this so that you can only play up to 4 marks, 4 PGs in a gold paladin deck. And this is an interesting type of errata because it does open up to different possibilities. It's not necessarily restrictive because as the game progressed, we did get Quinton Walls, a different type of Sentinel. Counterblast 1 check top 5 used them as guards, and then we also eventually got other grade 1 Sentinels that had different skills like unflipping damage, doing other stuff, drop 1 draw 1. And then we have draw PGs, and then we had crit Sentinels, big shield value but not perfect guard. Stuff like this I think is an important type of errata for the game because it opens up it to possibilities without making like, oh yeah, just play like 4 draw PGs, 4 grade 1 PGs, and all that stuff, right? So I think it's important for the game, but also something that you should, understand, because, it does happen in games, and I think for this type, it is generally better than not. Next is the nerfs, and one of the major nerfs in the TCG recently, not very recently, like half a year ago, was Top Idol Riviere. Top Idol Riviere, the skill mainly, the only change was that you can only use the second ability. It says the ability can only be used once per turn, including cards with the same name. Before the nerf, you could use it as many times as you want, and it was kind of absurd. But Bushi was willing to step in and go like, nope, you can't do that. Bermuda is busted enough. They've had their fun, and then we're gonna nerf it, and not let you do that. And another type of, I guess, nerf in terms of not just card text would be restricting the number of cards you can play with. This was the type of nerf that Bushiroad preferred, and first type they introduced was limiting the number of DNs, Conros, MLBs, Tsukiyomis, stuff like that in play. Whether or not that's still a thing, it is still a thing. But for now, I guess they're more willing to straight up just change the card text. And is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? I think that's up for discussion. But for the health of the game, I think it's a fair decision. I mean, it's their game after all, and Bermuda was dominating, and I think, personally speaking, I think it's justifiable. Next are the buffs. This is the most controversial one in my opinion, because are there actually buffs? Not that I recall of. Not in my mind, at least. If there are examples of buffs, do let me know. And does Bushi buff by reprints? Do reprints have better skills? Not exactly, but sure, because they did buff by printing new cards, and the one example I can speak of is Blaster Dark. Now, if you're not familiar with Blaster Dark in V series, this card came out with the trial deck, Ren Suzugamori, but it recently came back to relevance in Royal Paladins, because MLB just came out, right? The MLB special set, and it's going to come out to the TCG on the English side soon. But the new version, the newly printed version, has an extra skill, a third skill, a continuous skill that says this card can be used in a Royal Paladin deck, or some version of that. But is this really a buff? It isn't. It isn't a buff because, regardless of the skill itself, Bushi isn't applying this errata to all the cards. This isn't technically an errata. This isn't on the list. It isn't on the website. It isn't a card text change. It's it's a new card. It's a separate entity. And so what does that mean? That means Bushi isn't really going to buff cards. They don't really like that, because, well, we can actually just change it up and make you buy more. So, it's business, I guess. But yeah, I mean, so that's basically the 4 types of main erratas in Cardfight Vanguard. And I guess I'll be moving on to Vanguard Zero now. And in Vanguard Zero, we also have typos, a lot of them actually. For example, this Flusk Marmoset. It's a Great Nature starting Vanguard Forerunner. Its skill is counterblast 2 to have one of your rear guards get plus 4,000 until out of turn, and retire that unit at THT end of that turn. Of course, it's a very simple typo. It's the, obviously, and you can still play it. It's not a big deal. Again, typos aren't a big deal most of the time, but it does affect the player experience. And honestly, this kind of typo, especially since it's a digital game, right? Like, if you just have the text, you copy and paste it to something like Word or something, there will be an underline. They will tell you that there's a mistake, and you could just autocorrect it. It shouldn't be that hard, and I'm gonna judge Game Studio and Bushiroad for that. So I guess it's not that hard. Honestly, it's not that hard. I hope they do a better job with it. But yeah. Next is the keywords. Similarly with how PGs changed with the Sentinel term in the TCG, Sentinels also had a keyword errata in Vanguard Zero. Not exactly the same thing because the old PGs already had the Sentinel keyword in Vanguard Zero, but instead the new generation Perfect Guards with the archetypes got their activation requirements changed. Instead of both requirements, whether it's a lethal attack or it's an attack that will put you to 1 damage from losing, it's only the first text. They removed the put you up to 1 damage from losing skill, and the reason why is because, well, they wanted to differentiate the cards, which is a good thing. I think you shouldn't just have one card being better than the other because it has an archetype on it. The second thing is because it works with the game design, right? Like, one enables you to enable limit break or break rides more efficiently and effectively. The other makes you be safer, and both have their uses and both have their values, and this is good game design. So is this errata a good one? I think it's also a good errata. Similar to the TCG, it does actually open up to more options, but also doesn't restrict deck building by too much. You won't play 8 PGs at this point. Next is the nerfs, and one of the most memorable nerfs is the Wingle Brave nerf. Now, Wingle Brave, of course, had its text changed when translated into Vanguard Zero. That's a discussion for a different day. It used to cost nothing, now it's costing counterblast 1. But then it's still really absurd because of how your opponent can't really guard the Wingle Brave at the boost. And so, now they had to change it to Counterblast 2 instead of Counterblast 1, and then it can only search for a grade 3 or higher blaster instead of any blaster unit. Is this a nerf? Yes, of course it is a nerf. It's a big nerf. You're not only increasing the cost, but also changing the text itself, the skill itself. But is it justifiable? Like, we all know how dominating MLB was, and some of this stuff you can't really anticipate with playtesting, and so I think it's justifiable. They even did give us packs for these nerfs. Wingle Brave nerf, Tejas nerf, stuff like this. They give us packs back. They won't do that for the TCG, so I think this is honestly a positive thing. They do want to make the game player experience better for everyone, not just the dominant players or the players that play niche decks. Everyone. They want to make it as fair as possible, not one thing particularly broken, and so I think it's a fair nerf, and the MLB really did deserve it as a tier 0 deck. The next is buffs, and buffs is some, as we talked about in the TCG section. Buffs is rare to come by and not really existent in the TCG, but in Vanguard Zero, buffs are quite prevalent actually. Not only just increasing the base stat of cards, from 10k to 11k like Cosmo Lord, but also literally just updating skills and giving more skills to units, right? Like, for example, Dayusha. Dayusha will be a rank reward soon, and they added the skill. In your hand, you can activate by discarding this card. You can randomly add one card from the Dimension Robo. Like, there's 4 different types, Die Dragon, Dire Mariner, etc., and then add it to your hand. And like, this kind of design is also interesting because it's not like you won't play Dayusha, because Great Dayusha is something that people do want to play, but they do want to make it so it's more interesting, or it's more incentivizing for people to actually play the deck, play rank for it. And also it does challenge the box that the tools that they can play with, because you can't just discard Dayusha and generate a random 1 of 4 card from thin air into your hand in the TCG, right? Like, if it was in the TCG, it'd do something slightly different, like search your deck for one of these, but it won't be random anymore. And whether or not that's good game design is beyond me. Like, I don't study this kind of stuff, but for Game Studio to be willing to make these changes, add some skills to cards, add stats to cards to make them relevant, I think it's pretty good, especially when these cards were already underwhelming. I do think that it is good that they are willing to do this. So overall, how is Vanguard and Vanguard Zero doing? And I primarily want to look at Vanguard Zero here at this point, because if you look at it, at the end of the day, the medium is the message. And this quote is from this Marshall McLuhan guy. He does some media studies or something. But basically, the idea is that Vanguard Zero does leverage its platform well, and they are willing to take steps to improve the game. So don't so it's like don't stomp on Vanguard Zero too much. They are trying, and I do appreciate their efforts. So in terms of better, they are better at compensating the devaluing and the nerfing and all that of the cards, right? Like if they nerf Wingle Brave, they will give you extra packs. But when they nerf Rivier, they won't go to people who actually have Rivier and go like, here are some more packs. I'm sorry I nerfed your card. They can't do that. Like, how are you gonna trace people with Rivier or something and give them packs? Willingness to push buffs. Yeah, they are quite willing to push buffs. You don't see that in the TTG, and even if they do, they'd rather you just buy more product because they're a business. In Vanguard Zero, they don't mind. They are also pushing product. They are pushing, you to go roll for Dimension Police to play the game, or play ranked, and you have to go get new cards to play rank better with new decks. And so they are willing to do that because it's more aligned with their incentives, and I think that's a good thing. That's definitely a good thing for players and the business as well. Next is card adjustments. We did talk about this slightly. How Wingle Brave went from 0 counterblast to 1 counterblast. Small changes here and there, and I think it's important because cards need to be adjusted to translate well into Vanguard Zero. Some cards just don't work. Some cards work too well, and whether or not some of this is good design or bad design, they do have to make some changes here and there, but they do need to keep to the spirit and the core of the card's design itself, right? Like they definitely do better than some other digital card games, I believe. So Game Studio is doing a pretty decent job, better than decent actually. And I think we should appreciate them more. But one of the bad things is definitely glitches. You won't have glitches in the real TCG. At most, you'll have cheating, which I did talk about in the cheating video. If you're interested, do check that out. But glitches is prevalent. There are cheating in Vanguard Zero as well, but they do try to catch them. At the current moment, I do still see some Facebook posts and stuff about people cheating, and that's very unfortunate. But it does take them time to catch these cheaters, and I guess that's the nature of competitive digital games. You can't really avoid it. Can they do a better job? Of course they can do a better job. But for now, I think they're doing a pretty good job. When they see that the players are responding well to the game, they are investing more into the game. The speed of the game was just too fast at the beginning, and now they're willing to take their time and do more stuff here and there to thank the players, show appreciation and stuff. And I think that's very important. And it's a sustainable model, and at the end of the day, erratas do happen, typos do happen, but how do we approach it is a very important thing, and I believe that Vanguard Zero actually approaches it better than Vanguard TCG. So thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please subscribe, like the video, comment down below which errata was the most impactful to you. Like for me, some cards that you have, having the text changed really hurts the value of the card, right? Like if you own Rivier back like 6 months ago, it's worth a lot more than it would be worth right now. Like of course there is power creep and all that, and there are new cards and all that, but you can't deny that it was a really strong card, and you see dollars just falling out of the card, gone, poof, the value of the card just disappears, vanishes, because of one decision that Bushi made. But instead, in Vanguard Zero, at least they'll compensate you for it, and I don't know. But yeah, tell me which errata was the most impactful to you. Do you like the idea of game changes like this? Do you support it? Do you disagree with it? Do you think that you shouldn't change the text itself because you should have playtested it, right? Logically, that's how it should have been. But there are some things that you can't avoid, some things that you've never thought about. And yeah, I guess that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, subscribe again, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.